Rudy, I want to start off by talking something that's kind of late breaking, if you will. Premier Legault saying tariff threats are already, despite the fact they've not been formally announced by Donald Trump, already slowing down investment in Quebec. And he wants quick renegotiation of CUSMA, the Canada-U.S. States Mexico Free Trade Agreement. What do you make of this?
Yes, I believe that on his first statement, he's correct. I mean, there's a message now to the world that if they don't want to have tariffs in terms of doing business with the U.S., they should have their plant or their facilities in the U.S. So is there some foreign investors that are now not looking at Canada, for example, or not making more investment in Quebec and saying, look, we should maybe look at the U.S.? For sure, there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the business sector. In terms of the other aspect, which is the renegotiation of CUSMA from 2026 to earlier, there was some information earlier last week that maybe that was always the plan of Donald Trump, and that everything he's doing right now, the tariff and threatening Canada, is to basically try to restart those negotiations earlier in 2025 instead of 2026. I think it's a possibility, especially on cars, because we know that the U.S., especially the new administration, they want to have those plants, those auto cars plants back from Mexico and back from Canada to the U.S., especially maybe changing some rules of origin, saying that there must be a larger content of U.S.-made pieces in cars. So I think that that's a possibility. But at the same time, we still don't know what's going to happen. We still don't know if that February 1st is a hard deadline. Yes, the press secretary of the White House mentioned again that it's still February 1st. But for the moment, we don't know if it's going to happen and if everything's going to be targeted at what they say a 20 or 25% tariff.
So do you think, though, I mean, you're right about this idea, and I remember we talked about it at the time, that Donald Trump's real ploy here is to reopen, right, CUSMA, to reopen the NAFTA deal and work out a better deal. But here's the Quebec premier saying, yes, we should actually go ahead and do it and kind of give him a win. Do you agree with that?
I think that it's difficult because it's not only, I mean, first of all, we have to really set an agenda about those negotiations, and it's not going to be only a negotiation with the U.S., it's also going to be with Mexico. So the three countries need to agree to say, okay, we're back at the table. So we have to also obviously check with Mexico what they want to do, but also what's going to be on the agenda, what's going to be on the table. Is it cars? Is it dairy again? You know that dairy is also a very sensitive issue in Canada in terms of supply management, but also an offensive objective of the U.S. So we need to have some boundaries instead of, okay, if we're going to renegotiate, what are we renegotiating? Under what, base? Is it also, again, still lumber? Because that's also an ongoing issue, and it's been for years and years. So it's a question of if the U.S. wants to renegotiate, first of all, they have to say it, and we have to, again, say, okay, when, and what's the timeline, and what exactly is on the table.
Okay, I don't know if you had a chance to hear Jean Charest on CNN today. Did you catch any of this?
No,
okay.
I didn't.
I'm going to play this for you now. I'm going to play it for you now. I want you to hear this, and I want you to consider, of course, remember, Jean Charest is part of the Canadian Council, if you will, dealing with this proposed tariff threat, right? Here's what he said today on CNN.
Everything is going to be on the table. I doubt that you'll hear Canadian officials talk about what they intend to do until they actually do it, which is the way that we're going to manage this situation. In the case of energy, it is a huge relationship. You consume 20 million barrels of oil every day. You produce 13 million. Canada supplies you with 4 million. You have a deficit. We supply America with 60% of the foreign oil they consume. Almost all of the foreign natural gas comes from Canada. Hydroelectricity is part of that. There's no one, though, Paul, who's been out there saying we're going to cut it off. But there are other options on how we could deal with energy to be able to make our point. Wouldn't want to do that, but if we have to make our point, we will.
Okay, if we have to make our point, we will. Obviously saying Canada is prepared. You heard what he said. What did you think?
Yes, I mean, I think it's the same thing in terms of we have to be ready. We have to be ready to respond. But again, what's the sequence? Are we going to use that energy card? Yes. If so, when? At exactly what moment? And whatever the U.S. is saying, I mean, when it comes to energy, when it comes to lumber, when it comes to critical minerals or other things, they have to at least, They cannot just start all over again in a couple of weeks or something. If they have to turn their economy around, they need Canada, and at least to have a 6 months or a year or 2 years, for example. We saw it during COVID when the border was closed and the supply chain. For the moment, they need Canada. They cannot just make changes. So do we have cards to play? Yes. But again, we have to wait and see what the U.S. is going to do.
Okay. I want to get on to what happened today in Quebec City. Of course, the National Assembly reconvening, if you will, after winter break. Quebec's Immigration Minister, Jean-François Roberge, planning on tabling basically an integration law, I guess, to supersede Bill 96 and Bill 21. I think the question from a lot of people is, why do we need this? But this whole idea of common culture based on values, all this with respect to immigrants, what did you make of that?
I think that the CAQ is basically back on the offensive in terms of their nationalistic agenda. It's exactly what they were doing before the pandemic, and I think they're continuing to start this over again. I think that politically it's not very... Remember what happened in autumn when there was not enough funding for newcomers, especially for French classes. So I think that it's difficult for the CAQ now to say all of a sudden we're going to make this bill when at the same time they didn't have enough funding for newcomers. So look, they've stated that they're against multiculturalism, the Canadian vision of multiculturalism. They want to have what they call the social contract with newcomers, but we'll see what happens with this bill. But again, I think that they have to start with putting the correct funding in terms of French lessons for newcomers.
All right, we will leave it at that. Rudy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Rudy Husny on a couple of stories in the news today. 5:15 off to traffic, CJD 800 Traffic Center, and Lauren Glazer. Lauren?
Aaron, we do have delays on the eastbound side of the T-Can. Starting Chateau-Vaudreuil runs down to the Latour Bridge. More volume between Cavendish and Saint Laurent on the eastbound Met, and also between Lac-Courtier and Anjou. Southbound 25, pretty busy. Prévost to the tunnel. Also delays on the westbound side of the Met. They start Anjou through to Papineau. We did have an earlier stall there, but that has been cleared out. More volume on the westbound Met between Rockland